The rain hammered against the hospital window like accusations against glass, each drop carrying the weight of 23 years of silence. Sarah Martinez pressed her forehead against the cold surface, watching the world blur through her tears in the storm outside. Behind her, machines beeped steadily, marking time for the man who had never marked birthdays, graduations, or the countless nights she'd waited by the phone for a call that never came. "The doctors say you have maybe a week," she whispered to the unconscious figure in the bed, her voice barely audible over the ventilator's mechanical breathing. "Mom always said you were too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to say sorry, but I need to know it before it's too late. How did you ever want to be my father?" The silence stretched between them like the 20 years since their last conversation, when 18-year-old Sarah had screamed at him to get out and never come back. Now, at 41, Marcus Rodriguez looked smaller somehow, diminished by the cancer that had eaten away at more than just his body. The proud construction foreman who had once seemed larger than life was now just a fragile man whose estranged daughter was his only emergency contact. Sarah had driven 8 hours through the night to get here, leaving her own family in Denver when the hospital called. Her husband Mark had kissed her forehead and whispered, "Go find your peace, baby." Their 2 kids, Emma and Tyler, had hugged her tight, not understanding why Mommy was crying about a grandfather they'd never met. "Mrs. Henderson?" A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah turned to see a young nurse, barely out of college, with kind eyes and scrubs decorated with cartoon butterflies. "I'm Jenny. I've been taking care of your father." "He's not really a," Sarah started, then stopped. What was the point? "How has he been?" Jenny glanced at the chart, then back at Sarah with surprising warmth. "He talks about you sometimes. When he's lucid." She paused, studying Sarah's face. "He carries this in his wallet." The nurse held out a worn photograph, edges soft from years of handling. Sarah's breath caught. It was her high school graduation photo, the one she'd never sent him, never thought he'd want. She was smiling in her cap and gown, young and hopeful, before life had taught her that fathers could disappear and leave shadows where love should be. "Where did he get this?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Your mother, I think, before she passed. He told me she sent it with a letter." Jenny hesitated. "He's been asking for paper to write something for you, but his hands shake too much now." That evening, Sarah sat beside his bed as the sun set behind the Colorado mountains. The morphine kept him peaceful, but his eyes would flutter open occasionally, unfocused and searching. During one of these moments, he seemed to see her clearly for the first time in days. "Sarah?" His voice was a whisper, throat raw from the breathing tube they'd removed that morning. "I'm here, Dad." The word slipped out before she could stop it, carrying decades of longing she'd tried to bury. His eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mija." "I'm so sorry." "For what?" The question she'd carried for 20 years finally found its voice. "For being scared." His hand moved slightly toward hers, and she took it without hesitation. "When your mother died, you were only 3. You looked at me like I could fix everything, and I knew I'd fail you. I always failed everyone I loved." Sarah squeezed his hand. "So you left." "I thought, if I wasn't there to disappoint you, maybe you'd be better off. Your Aunt Rosa was so good with you, and I was just this broken man who drank too much and couldn't even read you bedtime stories without crying. I needed you anyway," Sarah said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I needed my father, even if he was broken, especially because he was broken." Marcus closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his weathered cheek. "I got clean, 5 years after I left. Got a job, a little apartment. Drove by your school so many times, watching you at recess. You were so beautiful, so smart. I'd sit in my truck and practice what I'd say if I got brave enough to walk up to that fence." "Why didn't you?" "Because you deserved better than a father who had to practice loving you." The words hung in the air like a prayer waiting for an answer. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a wall she'd built brick by brick beginning to crumble. She thought of her own children, how they'd never questioned her love, never had to wonder if they were wanted. She thought of Mike, who loved her despite all her sharp edges and trust issues, who helped her learn that love didn't always leave. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah said, her voice steady now. "My daughter Emma is 8, same age I was when you left, and sometimes, when she's scared or sad, She crawls into bed with me and asks me to tell her about when she was little, about how much we wanted her before she was even born. Marcus opened his eyes, listening. I never had those stories, but I could have them now, if you want to tell them to me. For the next 3 hours, as the hospital settled into its quiet night rhythm, Marcus told Sarah about the day she was born, how he'd cried when he first held her, smaller than he'd expected but perfect in every way. He told her about the songs he used to sing when she had nightmares, about the butterfly mobile he'd made for her crib, about how proud he'd been when she took her first steps into his waiting arms. I kept all your school pictures, he whispered as dawn broke through the window. Every year, your aunt would send them. I have them in a box under my bed at home. There's also some letters I wrote but never sent, and a savings account I started for your wedding day. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I got married 12 years ago. It was small, just family. I know. I was there. Her head snapped up. What? In the parking lot of the church. I couldn't go in, but I wanted to see you happy. You look so beautiful in your mother's dress. His voice grew weaker, but his eyes were bright. He seems like a good man. You're Mike. The way he looked at you, like you were his whole world. He is good. And my kids are they're amazing, Dad. Emil has your eyes, and Tyler builds things with his hands just like you did. I'd like to meet them someday. Sarah's heart broke all over again. Dad, I know I'm dying, Mija, but maybe you could bring them to visit my grave sometimes. Tell them their grandfather loved them before he ever met them. The tears came hard then, 20 years of grief and longing pouring out of her. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, I'll bring them. And I'll tell them about the butterfly mobile and the songs and how much you loved their mama even when you were too scared to show it. Marcus smiled, really smiled. For the first time since she'd arrived. Will you stay with me? I'm not going anywhere. He died 3 days later, holding her hand as the morning sun painted the mountains gold. His last words were thank you for letting me be your father. At the funeral, a small gathering of his co-workers and neighbors were surprised to see Sarah's family drive up from Denver. Emma and Tyler stood solemnly beside their mother as she placed a butterfly on his casket, a small blue one that Emil had found in their garden and carefully preserved in a book. Is that really our grandpa? Emma whispered. Sarah knelt down and pulled both children close. Yes, baby. He loved you so much, and he was so proud to be your grandfather. As they drove home that evening, Tyler asked, Mom, why are you smiling? Sarah caught his eyes in the rearview mirror. Because I finally got to say goodbye to my daddy. And because he got to meet his grandchildren, even if it was just for a little while. In the end, it hadn't been about forgiveness or making up for lost time. It had been about love, imperfect, complicated, but real. The kind of love that waits patiently in parking lots and saves wedding pictures and whispers apologies across decades of silence. The kind of love that teaches us that it's never too late to be the person someone needed us to be, even if we can only do it for a moment. Sarah kept the butterfly mobile Marcus had described, found it exactly where he said it would be, still carefully wrapped in tissue paper after all these years. It hangs now in her grandchildren's nursery. A reminder that love finds a way, even when we think we've lost our chance to give it.